Tonight, I actually want to start off with a poem I've never read in public before. It is from this book, Many Small Fires, that Diane mentioned. And this book looks at my father's homelessness. He was chronically homeless. He was a paranoid schizophrenic and was treatment resistant. And kind of how Todd was saying, how do you tell these stories of your family, right, in a way that is clear that that is not your story and that honors them and preserves their humanity and on many different levels. And why I want to read this poem tonight is my father recently passed away, and I feel like I need to read something to him. And so this poem is called Divining. And for those of you who aren't sure what divining is, this is for people who feel like they can feel where the water is underground. And it's actually more of a prose poem. It's called Divining. We are a train, father and daughter, car and caboose, divining rods in front of our chest. We are water witching, doodle bugging, divining. We are marching. I tell him we are ready to parade down Main Street, and I'll write our banner slogan, call Spike. He'll treat you right. He says, shush, shush, you have to feel it, shush. So I wait for the twitch, wait for the sticks to cross to X, follow his pace, head down, feet placed in 8-inch patterns. Listen to whatever it is that rides the wind, butterfly, apple, old bell, nothing. I am learning how to listen to nothing. More real than what is there. I hear his back sweating, the sticks not moving, the promise from earlier in the morning, we'll get rich. You'd like that, huh? Be like your friends. His stick rigs, or doesn't. We stand so still, I can see how much everything moves in this yard, the leaves, the squirrels, the shrubs. We stand so still, Dad says, I can feel the ground, water. There is water. Or maybe not. I realize we do not have a machine to drill a well, nor do we know what prevents a well from caving in. I can hear his face reddening, and so I tell him, I don't want a well. I want what I have, a father who is a diviner. Diviner. So I partly wanted to start off with that poem because it's something of we all have these poems that tell a little bit where we have come from. I've heard Elizabeth Gilbert say your Genesis poem in a sense. And for me, that poem very much kind of yokes love and rupture, love and loss. So moving on to the new baby that came out in 2020, which is a book about grief, ironically, specifically, how to live with it mindfully and lovingly. And one theme that was running throughout this book are ways that we preserve memory. Of course, story. There's a large narrative sequence in the middle of the book. But I was really interested in once the storyteller who has known you has also passed away, how was your memory preserved? And this was a question that was haunting me. And what I started coming to was cave art and also DNA. And so we have both of those running throughout this book. I'm going to read now a poem that is talking about one of the caves I visited in Spain. It's called Cueva de las Monedas. And this is in sonnet form. Caves are not caves. They are thresholds into other worlds. We enter, blink into being, inhale as our ancestors would have for ripeness of bear or carnage from cougars feeding. Safe sense of cold clay, mud puddles and prayer pull us in past stalactites, past crystal calcium horns, past claw marks that rib walls in white. The mapless dark reminds how centuries when people knew they did not possess dominion over nature and its predators, pathogens, and meteors. Now we pretend otherwise, claim bright futures begin with plans and paths we clear with fire and hungry hands. One thing that kept coming up for me in this book, even though it was talking about grief, I realized it was talking about really resilience. And I'm going to read this story now that, gosh, it was something that was told to me as a child about my grandfather. It's called, he died while he was chopping wood for a fire, and he accidentally sliced into a beehive that was in the center of that log. And so I'm going to read this poem called Among the Yellows. And the poem, I like to always kind of make up forms for my poems and give the form of, in some way, what the poem is talking about or what the poem is acknowledging. And so this tends to be a 6-beat line, like the hexagons of a honey hive. My grandfather died from slicing a hive in half, a nest hidden in a log, his blade thinned to a dead end. What followed? A blur of bees, a man running wild, arms twice as thick as normal, neck vibrating out to in. He died before my birth, which is why I imagined this: 100 split hexagons, shining, licked gold, stirring with eggs, drips, pollen-dusted legs. Yellow slits, like lit apartment windows when darkness first peaks. Who hasn't peered in past politeness, hoping to see what is it exactly? Clicks and hums humans make, shaping their lives into order, the circles to scrub skillets, figure eights to rinse toddlers' hands, the curve to read the news, shapes and slices of the living, obligations of the alive. I've stood outside looking in, hoping for something. And once I saw it. A slumped stranger suddenly leapt from his chair, mouth open, arms outstretched to catch something he loved. He uncoiled his once crunched body into a flow of honeyed fear, to reach beyond us both, to hold, to clutch, to brush off whatever mark was made. I do not know what to name the hived hum that keeps us going. All I know is my grandfather's last act was running. The bee's last act was stinging. And whatever was falling in that apartment, its last act was flying. I think that is something that probably many of us have felt this past year. We don't know what to name that hived hum that has kept us going, but something has kept us, kept us going. So at the center of this book, I'm just going to read a couple more poems, is a narrative sequence that tells a story of a young mother who has inherited a disease that her own mother passed away from. And she's diagnosed with this disease right when she has her child. And one of my close friends, she a shaman, she passed away a couple of years after she gave birth to her second child. And some of her poems are actually in this book as a way to honor her memory, because they were also similar and connected to looking at life in terms of the cell and DNA, but also how we can persevere in terms of our genetics. And so this one poem that I'd like to read is the time when I got an email from Shira when she told everybody about her child being born, and also when she told us about the cancer that had returned. And this is called Joy is Earned. Let me find it here. It's easy to forget birth and death are partners, hovering in a corner at an otherwise pleasant party. Right after the arrival of her second child, the doctor said, "It's back, the cancer." My friend writes the update now, subject heading something with the word joy. The message lists the baby's weight, his height, his favorite song, the facts strung along like blue and white pennants. She tells us the doctors agree, no more options exist. I read the mass email in my office, desk lumped with half-assed student essays, bowl of dum-dums, quorum of hand sanitizers. What is it I had been worrying about? We treat these bodies like rented ponies, wash them up for the big events, tie pink ribbons and manes, then load them down again, ignore them till everything slows to a stop in a circle of circles. My friend continues with what she wishes for, wishing as if such a thing were possible, as if a birthday cake were being carried from the kitchen. The rest of us searching for the light switch and the right pitch. She leans in, casting a yellow circle onto her face. It's peaceful, she says. In my 20s, I worried about what I wanted to be. Now I know. I want to be old. And one final poem in this narrative middle section, which is all fictional, I just want to be clear about that. We have the mother's DNA begin to speak. And at first I wasn't sure what DNA was until it was real sassy. And it also had a way of suggesting that my life is part of a much longer continuous life. And I found that to be comforting, and also it made me small in a way that made me feel better. I don't really know how else to say it, but the voice of DNA ends up being really sassy. And at one point I realized, oh, that's my mom's voice. And so I'm going to read this poem where DNA is not being sympathetic toward the mother in the poem, in terms of the mother worrying about her own mortality. DNA's perspective is that is part of the cycle. So this will be my last poem of the night. A couple little details you need to know. Just the 4 nucleotides that are part of the DNA strand are called T, and well, longer names, but TNA, C, and G. And TNA are bound together, and C and G are always bound together. So when I was writing this poem, I reimagined everything DNA as like a nursery school teacher trying to keep all the children under control. This is called What DNA Knows. What is death to us? We've heard that myth, a ghost story to tell around a campfire. We're too busy to think. Our copies constantly clamor around our waist like children. They rush from the cramped classrooms into the red light of the first time, wanting a push on the swings. Surrounded by salty currents, how can we ask them to stay close? They backstroke, flip stroke, front stroke toward the wide mouth of the deep where they break into form. They mortar, they solder, they tower, they make us proud. And what is birth to us? Nothing and everything. We are one thing, desire. Isn't that what all gods are? More green, more grow, more grass. We direct circle time every second. Crisscross applesauce. We'll sing song to them, pointing to the picture book that instructs. Initiation, elongation, termination. We know who can sit together and who can't keep their hands to themselves. So we have an order, T and A, C and G. Our voice drones on and on, a push, a pull, a parcel of wet letters to the messenger who waits in the hall, ready to run and weave, to repeat and repeat and repeat. Thank you all for listening.